Welcome friends. When you work in an enterprise setup, usually business solution architect or data solution architect work with business stakeholder and create API design document. In some places it is known as API specification, and in some places it is also called API schema. The format of the document is either in JSON format or in YAML format. And once this document is ready, architect hand over the document to development team, and development team then build the API and deploy it. Keep this in mind. Let's assume we have received an API specification, and now we need to build a REST API using Java 17. Our data store for our API is CosmoDB, and once our API is ready, we need to deploy our API into Azure Kubernetes service. Since this project is big, so instead of creating a lengthy video, I have decided to create a series of video for this project. So this is the first video of this series, and we will be focusing on this segment of our development. We have API specification given. Using the Swagger CodeGen Maven plugin, we will be building our REST API boilerplate code, and we will also try to solve the errors that you may get while you will be using plugin, and also we will be looking into the shortcoming of this plugin. So what are the shortcomings of this plugin and how to rectify them. So this video is for this segment. So let's assume we have a API specification, something like this. And by the way guys, what I have done with this schema is, this is close to a real time or real world problem. Of course, I cannot put everything together that was part of my project, but I did my best to capture in this schema the most important aspect that we can use and develop the REST API. So in this, as you can see in the schema, we have a base path, we have a one endpoint that we need to build. Its name is identity verification detail. Method that we need to implement for this endpoint is post, and of course if you see the header, there are three header parameters. One is the authorization, which is mandatory. Second one is the trace ID, which is optional, and body parameter is an array of type person object. Okay, the definition of the person object is defined over here. Again, the person object has three required fields: person name, address, and party record identifier. And if there are other fields such as birth date, they are not mandatory. Person name and address are another objects. Person name is of type person name object, and address field is of type address. So our payload, request payload, will look something like this. Remember, this is our party record, and the payload is of party record, array of party records. Okay. Now the response payload for this endpoint, as you can see, let me take you back to the response to status quo 200. Is of type identity verification response payload, and in this response payload again it is a type object. There are two fields, verified input, and risk score. Verified input is of type verified input, risk score is risk score. Now if you take a look into this specification, every field has a type and along with that some sort of validation, like what is the minimum length, what's the maximum length, what is the minimum value if it is integer or decimal, what's the maximum value, and date, time, and the format, and so on and so forth. Okay, so keep this thing in mind that I am going to use this schema for our project. And what I will do, I will also upload this project into Git so you guys can take a look into the code as a reference. To start with, I am using Spring Boot initializer, and what I have done in the initializer is, of course it's Java. My Spring Boot version is 2.6.4. I'm using Java 17, and I have added two dependency, Spring Web and Spring Data for Apache Cassandra. Before I jump into the IntelliJ project, let me quickly give you the walkthrough of this Swagger CodeGen Maven plugin. So this is the GitHub location of this plugin, and it has like how to use basically this plugin, what are the various configuration parameter available to us that we can use to use this plugin to generate our REST API boilerplate code. So I have downloaded the Spring Boot initializer code into my IntelliJ and open that project. You can also do the same thing. Only thing that I have done in this project so far is I have added my API specification / API schema into my resource folder. My POM XML is exactly the same that is I have downloaded, and since we will be working on the Cassandra a little bit later, so let me do one thing. Let me take this thing off. So let me take off the Cassandra dependency, and as of now we have only starter web and starter test. Okay, now let's work on adding the Swagger CodeGen Maven plugin into our pom.xml. So let me copy the plugin, and I also need to copy dependencies, and let me add one property in the property section. So let me start with the property section, and then I will add the required dependency. So let me add it over here. So I have added the properties, and I also need to add the dependency. So let me add the dependencies also over here. So these are the dependencies that we need to add. Okay, now let me resolve my dependency first. Done. So my dependency has been resolved. My plugin is ready to use. So let me close this one. This is the plugin that we have added, correct? Yes, good. So in this plugin, my version is 3.0.33, and if you are going to use this version, then when you will be using the way I am using right now, you are going to get an error, and I will show you that error, and I will also demonstrate that how to rectify that error. Okay, now as this is a plugin, so it has a goal to generate, and if you see over here the configuration parameter that I have set over here, almost these parameters are able to resolve 95% of time in my real world all my problems. So I have included all of them over here. So output, of course, my input location that I have specified, this is nothing but it's defined in the property section. in the Maven in my Maven pom.xml. So it is over here, resource.identity verification service.json. So of course it is over here. This. Okay, so this is my schema over here. Correct. And these are the dependencies. There are, I think, 4 or 5 dependencies that I need to add. And let's focus on the plugin. So plugin, I have specified the output location where the generated code you want to be. So I usually put into the target, and which is the usually the standard practice also. There is, because what if your generated code you directly create into the source folder and you have make some modification and you need to rerun your plugin again, then whatever your modification that you have done in your model class or Rust controller, they will be overwritten. So it's always better to put them into not in the source folder, somewhere else, wherever you want to. Okay, so that's one thing. Also, I have this plugin told that through this parameter generate model. Yes, I need the model classes. The package name for model classes is this, and you can see I was playing around, so let me delete this one also because that is not right. So my model package name is this, my API package name is this, and I don't want supporting files. All I want is my model package, API package, as well as I have to intentionally tell to this plugin that I need classes also, not only the interfaces, I also need the classes. My library is Spring Boot, and important thing over here is that date library. So suppose you have a field of type date in your schema, and if you need to convert that into the date field into your model class or wherever it is being referred, then you need to define or configure in this plugin that, okay, by the way, use Java 17 to create the date library. Use the date library from Java 17 to create the date object or date field. Okay. So let's do one thing. Let's generate the code. Let me run the command mvn maven clean GENERATE sources. So URCES. And what you are going to see, you will be going to see an error, and then we'll see how to resolve them. So you can see I ran the command, my build field, and I am getting this error. And this error will occur if you are using this version. So as of now, this is the latest version, so I'm using that one. And this error is introduced to this plugin from Java 13, and there is an issue open to address this bug also. So let me tell you how to fix this bug or how to rectify this bug. So we need to add a dependency for this plugin. So let me add the dependency, and then we'll run the command again. So we are here. So this is the dependency that we need to add. Okay. So let me do one thing. Let me get this dependency one more time. It's ready. I'm here. Clear. Let's generate the code again. So if you see this time, our build was successful. Correct? Previously this was a problem. Now after adding the dependency, we ran this command and our build is successful. So let's do one thing. Let's clear buffer and close this one. And let's come to the target, because this is the location where we told our Maven plugin to create our output. Correct? Target generated sources Swagger. So target generated source Swagger. And if you'll see over here, we have a model class, we have a API interface as well as its controller. So let me do one thing. Let me first, before we evaluate all this generated class, let me do one thing. Let me copy these packages into our source folder. So let me copy over here and paste. Yes. So my models are copied. Okay, and then let me copy my controller.api, or I can do one thing. Yeah, we can copy. Okay, so we copied it under the API. Okay, so if you will see, this is the package location API. Okay, so let me close this. Let's do one thing. Let's create a controller package also for the completeness. ROER. Okay, and let me move my controller class under controller package, so that way it will be clean. Yes, of course I want refactor. Good. Okay, so my controller class is inside the controller, all my model classes inside the model, and my API interface is inside the API package. Now let me open the person object first. So as you will see over here, all the validation annotation all the validation that we had defined in our schema now systematically appearing over here. So we don't need to write a single line of code. You can see over here, correct? This is my person object, person class, and if you remember, party record identifier, person name and address were the mandatory field, whereas the birth date was not the mandatory field. So if you will come over here, you will see party record identifier, it is a not null, it's a mandatory field. Similarly, my person class, or that's my person attribute or field, whatever you want to call it, is also a mandatory field, person name. Similarly, the address name is also a not null field. It's mandatory, correct? As per whatever we had defined in our schema, systematically without even writing a single line of code, our model classes are generated, and you can take a look into that one also. Now if we quickly go over the interface, so this is the interface that it has generated for our API controller. So it generated the interface, and as you can see that it also mapped the REST request mapping method that is exposing HTTP method, correct, post. And if you will take a look into this section, it has all the information. So parameter, it's in header parameter, correct, all the header parameters defined over here, API gateway description, all that information is there over here. Required is equal to 2, and it has field name also, it has created the field name also, defined the string authorization, second parameter. Correct. So if you take a look into this one, second was my body, so it is also defined the body over here, list body. So without writing a single line of code, it has created everything. And of course, if you see, our this trace ID field over here. If you'll see trace ID, it is a field string, but it is not required. But if you see the body is a request field, valid. Its validation is annotation is systematically added, so that means like it will validate the what body is there. Our API is expecting that our request body is of array of person object. Okay, so all validated and everything is being defined over here. So, and if you take a look into the controller class, let me bring it over here, minimize it, you will see it. It's a request controller systematically appearing over here. Okay, now one caveat, remember when we were talking about what are the shortcomings. So one of the shortcomings of this plugin is, let me open my schema. Hopefully I have that schema open. No, it's not open. So let me open my resource and my schema. What was my base path? My base path was this. It's correct. This was my base path. But if you come to my controller, I'm not seeing this base path as a request mapping. Neither it is available in the API interface, because at the method level it is defining, but the implementation level, that request mapping for the base path request mapping is not defined. So you need to implement by yourself. Okay, so that you can implement at the controller, you can specify it over here. But in my case, I'm not putting it because I don't need it. I wanted to show you that that base path request mapping will not show up in the generated code, and this is one of the shortcomings. There is one more, and we will look into that one shortly. Before I compile this code and run this our API, let me do one cleanup, because I am not excluding this folder. So let me delete this one. Okay, so let me delete this one. Yes, I want to delete it. So I have deleted this one, and now let me run my application as it is. Or if you guys want, let me do one thing more before we do the compile and run. Since we will be testing this API through Postman, and if you know, when the Postman send the header request for the accept attribute, it says */*. So let me add that one as accepted value in the accept field, otherwise it will create problem. Okay, so that's one thing. So let me do it this way, or this my star dot star. So this is this is this, this is supposed to be, and this, and let me add one more, so it will be clean. Correct. So either it should not be null, application/JSON, because we are creating REST controller, and for the sake of Postman, because that's where we are going to use, I am putting */*. So in real world we don't put this way. Okay, we don't include this one. So this is just for our testing purpose. Okay, now if you see, let me minimize this one also. If all goes well, then it is returning you a mock response also. If you take a look into this one, response entity, identity verification response payload, it is returning that one, and it created a mock response also for us. And all we need to do, this is something that, you know, like I did not like it. Instead of calling it not implemented, because the moment you say not implemented, you are not going to see that response. Correct? It should basically say okay. So even though it is a mock, so we call it okay. Okay. So because what we are saying at this time is, if just come to this method, all is okay, then give me a mock response. If there is an IO error, then say internal system error. If nothing is there, then you like, if I'm not getting into this section, if things are null or something along those lines, give me say, give the reply back, say not implemented. That's all we are doing. Okay, so let's go to the postman. Oh no, before going to the postman, sorry guys, before going into the postman, let's run this application. So I am running this application now. It's building, you can see that. Build is successful. And shortly the run will start. So my build is successful. As you can see, my Tomcat, my application is started onto this embedded Tomcat server. So let's go to the postman. Okay, so this is my payload body. Inside the body, this is my endpoint, and in my header, authorization was the mandatory attribute, so I'm specifying it. So let me send this request and see what happened. So what happened? So let's see. I think we have to open it a little bit. My mistake. Yes. So it's successful because we get the response back. Right. So we passed. Like the happy path basically. We have specified everything over here as of now. We also specified the required parameter that is needed in the header section. We are passing that one. So we are receiving this one. Now let's do one thing. Let's rename this authorization. I'm just adding an. Okay, so I'm just adding one an over here. So my parameter name is now authorization. Correct? I've added one. So that means I'm not passing authorization because authorization was the mandatory field in my header. So let's see what happened. So it is saying that response was incorrect. Correct? So it is giving some error over here. And the reason, because I put dot end, so that's not good. So that was the error. It did not even go. So if you will see, when I pass the header, like authorization, I'm getting the bad request. Right? I'm getting the bad request. Now, the important part. So let me fix this problem. So I am sending the right parameter authorization, which is the mandatory field, and I'm getting the response because this is a mock response we saw in our code. We are not doing anything at this time, correct? So let's go to the body section. Now in this body section, if you see, let's come back to our source code just for a minute. And let me minimize this because we don't need it. And if you notice, in our request payload under person name was a mandatory attribute. Correct? If I open my, let me open my schema, and if you come down, my person name is a mandatory field or attribute or mandatory element for my person object. That's I'm passing, correct? And this is also defined systematically in my model classes. If I come over here, if I come to the person, and if you will see, my person name is need to be validated and it is not null. So that means if I don't pass the person name, then I should receive a error from my service. Correct? So let's do one thing. Let me take off my person name altogether. Okay, let me send the request again. I'm getting the response back. That's not right. Our expectation was, if I am not providing the person name, which is a mandatory attribute of my request payload, then it should throw me a validation error. Correct? It should show me the validation error. Now, to address this problem, we need to add a dependency. And that dependency is nothing but Spring Boot Starter Web validation dependency that we need to add into our pom.xml. So let me do that. So I'm here. Where is my plugin? I have to basically minimize my plugin. Let me minimize my plugin. I'm in the validation my dependency section, and let me add it all the way to the top. Why not? So I have added this. Okay, so let me resolve my Maven dependency. It is resolving. It resolved. Everything is resolved. Correct. So let's do one thing. Let's come to the run over here. Stop it. Clean it and minimize it over here and run my application one more time. Build and run more precisely. So it's building. You can see it's building. So my services started again. So let me minimize it. Correct. And now this time, if I will go to my Postman, let's first check the happy path. Things are working. Now remove my person name field from my payload, because person name was a mandatory in the person object, correct? So let me remove it, send the request, boom, internal server identity verification detail. That's good. So now I am getting an error. So just keep this thing in mind. Now let me add this one back and let me not pass any last name. So I have added the person name, but I'm not passing the last name. So I should also get the error, correct? So let's do one thing. Let me send it again. Again, I am getting the error. So that means things are working. And if I say LAST, I can put any name because it's just creating a mock response. Good. So I'm getting the mock response back. Okay. So I think I have covered what I supposed to cover in this video. Correct. So let me repeat one more time. What was the goal of this video? So we assumed we have received an API specification, correct? And using the Swagger CodeGen Maven plugin, we generated our boilerplate REST API source code using that plugin, and that plugin is over here, as you can see. And there are certain dependency that we need to add for this plugin to execute successfully. So we had added those dependency in the dependency section. And if we are using this version, because this was the version that I am using as of now, and bug is still not fixed. So if you are using it without adding this dependency, you will be getting an error. So in order to rectify that error, you need to add this dependencies. In this, for the plugin execution, generating the source using Maven clean generate sources. Okay, that's what command that we execute to create our code, generated code. Correct? The code was generated under this generated source Swagger. Correct? There was a folder over here. Then we move our generated code from here into our source folder. That's the second thing we did. And if you notice, we did the systematic move. First we move the model, then we move the model and API and controller. We have also observed that all the model classes are systematically populated. They have all the features that we had added in our Swagger, such as minimum value, minimum length, maximum length, required, not required. So all that such information, or that mandate is systematically showed up into our code. We did not even write a single line of code, correct? And shortcomings that we had noticed through generated by this plugin, that if you have a base path, this plugin does not rectify the base path. You have to manually add that one into your REST controller. Okay, that was one of the big thing. Now, as of now, if you see what we had done, basically our API interface is defined over here, and controller faces and implementation of that interface is defined over here, and we are keeping it the same way. So we did not even write a single line of code since we are doing the testing in the Postman. So all I did was I just added this one, and in order to leverage or use the mock response for the successful scenario, all I did basically I just changed this status. It was right now in the code, generated code, it says not implemented, but I just said okay, just to basically demonstrate. And the validation rules that we had implemented don't resolve, or basically don't come to the action until we add in our pom.xml this one dependency, Spring Boot starter validation. If we don't add this one, validation annotation defined all over the place into our controller, in our model classes, will not be effective until we add this one. And I think it is from 2.3.4 or something like that, correct? So since 2.3.4 onward, we need to add manually. Prior to that, it was not. It was built in mode precisely. Let me put it that way. So this is all in this video. So we have covered this section, this part. In my next video, I will be focusing on the error handling, because personally I feel that this is something that we need to take care upfront before doing any business implementation. This is something that I prefer to implement prior to implementing any business logic. So in my second video, I will be focusing on the custom error handling. So see you in the next video. One request, guys, please give me your feedback. What is working, what is not working, in the comment section. And if you would like to connect with me, please drop me an email. No issues at all. You can reach out to me anytime. And hope to see you in the next video. Thank you.